And the
podcast
begins with a song of rebellion.
How can this
podcast
be my life?
CD Burners.
I was watching the Emo Night meme.
Yeah.
We were laughing really hard in the office yesterday because it was Meredith was like,
So funny.
what do I? And it was just like,
When?
when I'm pierced or something.
When I pierced.
Yeah,
the veil.
when I like it because it was like when Pierce the Veil comes on at I was like when something is something and something. I'm just like just write when I'm Pierce the Veil. Like just like do that.
That is so funny.
It's so funny.
Oh boy. Okay.
We had a nice time.
We have a big episode today. Let me get our notes here, but this is an important one. This is one where they're going to come out of the woodwork and come for us.
I hope so. I like it. I actually really do like it.
The album or when people come for us?
Both. I think I like having haters.
It fires you up,
Yeah, kind of.
gets you going,
Yeah.
motivates you.
Well, it doesn't make me, the thing is like doesn't make me mad. Like it doesn't change like anything, and I like it.
It's funny.
Yeah, and they're usually right is the thing.
People are very protective about this band. So we're going to do our best. We were supposed to do this episode about a month ago. So I'm a little rusty. I actually pretty much spent a lot of time on the other album that we did today. But you know how it goes here at CD Burners. We record 2 in a day. So that's what we're doing. And this album is My Chemical Romance, 3 Cheers for Sweet Revenge. This came out on June 8th, 2004 on Warner Reprise Records.
2004.
2004.
Snapshot of what
right
the
in the
world
middle
was
of
like.
the year.
The world was like, so 2004. What were you doing in 2004?
I think I was in 9th grade. I think I just entered high school.
2004? Yeah.
Or maybe I was still in 8th grade.
Wild.
I didn't really become emo until I went into high school. 8th grade, I was just kind of a normal kid. And then the summer between middle school and high school, I remember I was like, I'm going to make a change. I remember that was the summer I was like, I'm going to go to Hot Topic and do all my back to school shopping at Hot Topic.
I think this was my backlash against popular culture era where I was like, how do I find bands that nobody's listening to?
Mm-hmm.
I think that was where I was. And that's also where I got really got into all the stuff that Mark Trombino really likes.
Yeah, I it's weird because this album came out early enough, 2004, where I should have liked it. I should have liked it at the time, but I remember seeing it on Fuse and I didn't like it. And I think it was because the music video for I'm Not Okay, it looked like a movie. And looking back on it now, when I watch it now, I'm like, this is one of the most iconic videos of all time. This is incredible. I thought it looked like a movie and I was like, this is too polished. I think it turned me off. I get artistically that was a choice, but in my 15-year-old brain, I was like, this is too polished. They're the big industry plant guys.
I get it. That's the way that I felt about the Paramore stuff.
Yeah.
Where I was like, this is trying, and it's not true is the thing looking back on it, right? It's these guys, I have a lot of stuff to say about this album and how much credit to give to them and everybody around them. But yeah, no, I definitely see that. And it's difficult because you're so young and you're so stupid.
Yeah. It was also just a weird time for music. It was a weird time for the scene. Obviously, this is the pinnacle album of breakthrough emo into the mainstream. When people talk about emo, they talk about My Chemical Romance. It came out on Warner, so they had the backing of the biggest, most powerful major label at the time. This is the pinnacle of taking the Jersey scene, who Mikey and Gerard and Frank and Ray were all part of, and boiling it down into something digestible by the masses, because this album sounds nothing like Bullets, the first album of My Chemical Romance. And when I listen to Bullets, brother, people will fight me, but I think it is a bad album.
I don't think, people will probably fight you just because fan wise, yeah.
But it's not good. It sounds bad.
Yeah, I wonder what they think about it.
I don't know how Howard Benson, I don't know how all the A&Rs saw what they saw, because I certainly would have put on Bullets and been like, this is garbage.
Well, if you remember a little band called Thursday,
Of course.
I think that, you know, I like how much all of the bands that we like Thursday. There's like an incredibly endearing thing that was going on around this New Jersey scene at the time. And, you know, reading into what that was like, you mentioned a couple of things. There's like, this is the pinnacle of emo, like what people thought emo was. I don't know if this is an emo album. I like don't think it is. I think it's like a rock.
It's like goth.
It's like a rock, theatrical pop rock is like what it is.
Sure.
And I think what's really awesome is that the guys in New Jersey around that time that were in bands that were emo and hardcore and like Saves the Day and like Midtown and Thursday and all those bands, like My Chemical Romance didn't sound anything like those guys, and they didn't look anything like those guys, but those guys put them on and supported them and encouraged them. And I think it feels really nice to know that you've got like this band that's so humongous, and, you know, when people don't know what emo is or emo culture is, they just like see a picture of My Chemical Romance and go like, that all started with a community of people that were just helping each other out and liking each other. And I think that, you know, I think is really awesome. Like, I think it's just very cool. And it's like a CBGB situation. Like, it reminds me of like a newer current CBGB situation.
Yeah, I think I remember it on on the Thursday episode. I think they were at the Eyeball Records house, and Mikey came up to Jeff and like was like, "Oh, that's my brother Gerard. Like, we're gonna have a band. Here, let us play you a song." And he just grabbed this like guitar with like a broken string and started playing. And Jeff's just sitting there like, "This is like the worst thing I've ever heard in my life." He's like, "Keep it up, guys. Yeah, great.
It's awesome."
But then Jeff went on to, you know, produce Bullets. And then I think it was Jeff who kind of really encouraged Gerard to lean into his love of like comic books and universe building and take that and bring it over to music. Like, that was what was going to differentiate them from all other rock bands, is like that theatrical element that you're talking about. And they do a great job here. But you know, it's not their pinnacle of a concept album. This album originally started out as a concept album, but it kind of got a little bit derailed. There is a whole theory that the original story of this album was that I think it was these two lovers that you see on the album cover, the Demolition Lovers. They were separated. I think the woman was killed, and the man made a deal with the devil. He was like, "I'll bring your lover back to life, but you have to give me the souls of 1,000 evil men." And so then this guy goes on like a killing rampage.
A man, a woman, and the devil, the three genders. Which I think is really, you know, not a lot of bands in this scene were so into. Dude, it's in the grand scheme of it, it's kind of like they're like kind of dorks.
Yeah.
Like kind of dorks, like, which is awesome. It's like so fucking cool. I was listening to a couple, you know, interviews with Frank, who play guitar. You know, it's like he's talking about getting on stage and being like, we are, you know, just like these weird dorky guys. And then you get on stage, it's like something is different, you know, and something takes over. They got to put on in a lot of ways, I think that since Gerard was like such a fantasy and comic book writer, got to place himself in his own and their own fantasy world, and this world that they built with My Chemical Romance. And I think that it's like, in a lot of ways, it kind of draws comparison to like Kiss and stuff, right? Like, in a lot of these ways where it's like a personas and in like our world, it's not exactly the same. It's not the same, but it's like there's an argument to be made, that these like mild mannered people step on stage and turn into something else and look completely different than how they.
Yeah, I mean, this is, if you look at like the artistic progression of this band, this is like the perfect stepping stone between Bullets and Black Parade, right? Because like this is the concept album. They're learning that they can be theatrical. I think towards the end of the Bullets tour was when Gerard started wearing the suit on stage, and then.
Which, by the way, I don't know how these guys look so good and play in suits. I'm so uncomfortable every time we have to like.
Do a costume or an outfit.
Yeah, but like they look so good and natural and playing in it. It's like him especially looks fucking awesome wearing it. He's like made to do that. There's just some people that are naturally great at it. I just like because they play in a rock. It's fucking awesome. I think that's great. That's an aside.
I remember when I used to work with Chromeo, and I remember one thing that Dave said. He was like, I feel like the definition of a good artist image is that you could be drawn as a cartoon or like a caricature.
That's really smart.
Yeah.
A really smart thing to say.
Yeah. And I think that My Chemical Romance was realizing that at this period of their life, like they all had their outfits. You just think about it and you can see it. It's very clearly defined. You got the red and the black and the white, like you got your colors. This is a masterclass in branding, from the album cover to the outfits, to the makeup, to the fonts, to the merch. This is like such a masterclass in branding.
It's world building. Like it's a thing.
It's a universe.
Like, it's which is like essentially like what comic books and movies and it's world building, and they built a world. And I just think, I really just think it's so cool how like all the New Jersey guys supported them not sounding anything like it. You mentioned that like you don't like the way that Bullets sounded, and like a lot of people didn't like the way that like Thursday sounded, which is like well known, and Jeff talks about it. And so I think that there is like a parallel there. There's probably a reason why you feel like that. It is strange that like they got lumped in with this. Like this is emo, and it's because maybe there was no real, like you said, you can picture it in your head. If you can draw it, you can see what it is. And maybe there wasn't a band out there that pop culture could pin that term on, and they maybe how they got lumped into that, because in my eyes, it is certainly. It has influence. They were around it. They are influenced by it. There is some stuff in there, but it sounds to me like a theatrical pop rock album.
Well, it really launched My Chemical Romance and the genre of emo into a new stratosphere. It went platinum less than a year after its release. As of 2017, it's gone 3 times platinum. I'm Not Okay. The highest position for I'm Not Okay was number 86. The album was number 28 on the Billboard 200, number 14 on Top Rock. And then in 2020, it had a resurgence and it came back number 6 on the top alternative albums. It's a timeless record, and it really shaped culture in such a huge way, not just emo culture, but mainstream culture, and kind of really, like you said, defined what emo was for the mainstream.
You know what else it defined?
What?
H&M.
Why?
I don't know. I just I feel like everybody that like wanted to dress like this, like H&M at the time was like that. The
really?
story, yeah. Like
no.
I legitimately think so.
I don't think so.
It was
H&M was too basic.
No, that's the thing. It was like we didn't know. It was like people that were wearing shitty clothes all the time, but like thought that H&M was fancy because they had like suits. I think that big shout out to H&M.
I don't see it. I remember I wanted to look like Gerard in his suit when I was going to my, freshman dance, and I bought everything at Hot Topic.
Yeah, I think it was that. I think it was in the mall, H&M core. Like, I agree. Yes, it was like Hot Topic sold the things that looked like that. But when they went to go get, it was like a band guy's version of what's the fanciest thing you can do. Like, I think that it really, like, I think H&M, I don't know if gets enough credit during this period of time.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so this album was supposed to be a concept album, but like we said, it kind of got derailed a little bit because of the passing of Gerard and Mikey's grandmother. And I guess she was hugely influential on the boys in their pursuit of art and music. She actually bought the band their first touring van. And, you know, I think she taught them how to draw and sing and was really kind of like their biggest supporter and encourager. And she died a day after they got back from tour, and Gerard was just racked with guilt. He kind of pivoted this album. He wrote Helena, which is kind of like a letter to himself, just being upset with himself for not being around to spend more time with her. That is one of the best songs ever.
Like, also shout out to the Cozy representative. I like that guy. And
he's a nice guy.
And
I don't know if he's nice. I never met him.
I
like his videos.
I like his videos too. He does a good job at like breaking stuff down, and he gets way more shit right than we do. But you know, I think, you know, he kind of went into this a little bit, and I think with any artistic project, you know, if something, you know, you set out with the goal of something to happen, and then something like that happens, and you can't be like, all right, well, we're going to wait to release these things in the next period of time. It's like you're figuring out a way how to make all of those things fit together. And I think that, yeah, it probably the full concept of what they wanted it to be got lost along the way, but I think they somehow managed to grab all of the things that were important to them and they wanted and kind of make it fit into this world. So
I'm not sure if this is a quote from Gerard. Johnny didn't cite it, but it says the record ended up being much more about loss and real life than anything. So I would say it's a good split.
You did, you know, you said something about like how it sounds, and this is their first time with they, you know, in like their words, like, you know, a real producer.
It's also the first album with Frank Iero, incredible guitarist.
I really enjoyed watching interviews with him. He seems like a really likable guy.
You're just saying that because he's also a short king.
Did not know that.
You didn't?
No.
I
never pay attention to this shit.
He's a short king.
The only dude I know is.
Well, I only know it because in the documentary where they're talking, I think it's like a BTS of the Helena video. You know, they have to all carry the casket.
Yeah.
And Frank like couldn't reach it. Like everybody else is carrying it.
I get it. I'm fucking right there with him.
Yeah. We posted a meme on Emo Night that was so funny. It was like these like construction workers carrying like a big piece of sod, and then there's one really short guy and he's just like hanging off of the sod.
Yeah, I get it. I'm right there with him. But no, I don't know. He just had a lot of really fun. It was like a lot of fun conversations about like the recording process and his influences in like a not a boring way. The way he was talking about it, he's like, dude, some of these songs are like fucking 4 chords, you know? He's like, but then some are like, you know, looking back at it, it's like, are we just putting parts together or is this a song? Like, and I think that right there is such an important piece of information. If anybody was ever wrote any music or in bands, like when you're younger, it's like, I have these parts. How do we fit it together? That like really speaks to people like who are trying to grow and work together as a band. Cause you can look back at it and be like, ooh, looking back.
They have said that Howard Benson taught them how to write a chorus. Yeah. And I'm really interested to talk to Howard. We're going to have him on the podcast on this episode towards the end of this pod. And I'm going to ask him how the hell he found what he found in this band, because he really found a diamond in the rough here. He helped them channel everything that was good and so much more from that first album into my favorite My Chemical Romance album.
It's your favorite My Chemical Romance album. And he made it sound like, you know, like some of those songs are 4 chords and some of them are so vastly all over the place, which makes this album so dynamic. Like, I think that's like the coolest thing. That is such a cool thing to do, to be able to take something so simple, make it incredible, and then take something so complicated and still make that as incredible, but sound like it's I don't know. I think he did such a good job, and they did such a good job like writing this album.
Yeah.
It's so fucking weird too, because like, you know, I always look at like the Wikipedia first. I always like go and be like, all right, what does this bullshit have to say about this shit? And it's like, people say that it's a lot like the Misfits or AFI, and like it was another band, and I was like, these people are obviously just like looking at them.
Right.
Like if you listen to the Misfits, it's like the worst sounding shit you've ever heard in your life. I love it. So nobody give me shit. I have a Misfits tattoo, but it sounds nothing like My Chemical Romance. It just is like that theatrical. It's like it's the theatrical stage performance of harder music.
Yeah, of like punk.
It doesn't have punk shit. Yeah.
I don't think that, you know, I don't remember reading that they were ever influenced by the Misfits. I remember seeing Iron Maiden. They loved Iron Maiden.
Yeah, they loved Iron Maiden. I was talking about like the people who were reviewing
right. So it's like
what,
people are just looking at them and thinking, oh, that's like a gothy, like punk theatrical band. They're not actually listening to it.
Yeah, no, it's like they didn't put on one thing.
Yeah.
Because I listened to it and I was like, maybe the fact that there's like four power chords, like, yeah, but sure. So is every like music that you could say Taylor Swift is like the Misfits.
Sure.
You know?
I love to think about, you know, we just talked about Paramore on the last record and like kind of the label strategy behind this. So like this was the major label debut of My Chemical Romance, but Reprise was already like pretty into the emo world at this point. So they put out the Used album. The Used was like the fucking biggest band at the time. They were such a huge, huge band. And they were a big reason why Reprise signed My Chemical Romance. I guess our friend Luke Wood, he's the A&R over at DreamWorks who worked with Jimmy and signed them. It was him. He was trying to fight for them versus Tom Whalley and Craig Aronson. They were over at Warner. And I remember reading that they were outside of, I think it was like Bert was in the passenger seat of Craig Aronson's car. And he was like, should I sign this band? I don't really know. And like, Bert was like, if you don't sign this band, you're going to regret it for the rest of your life. Boy, was he right.
Yeah, that's cool. What a cool thing to do.
Yeah. But yeah, Bert and Gerard, this is their Toxic Twins era. This is like, they are out on the road together. MCR is kind of like, they're just a step behind the Used at this point. Bert and Gerard are doing a lot of drugs together and just drinking and tearing up hotel rooms, like doing the rock star thing. And then this album comes out and MCR starts taking over, surpassing the Used, and a little bit of tension starts developing. This is like Taste of Chaos era. Like they're out there on the road. They're out doing this arena, these arena shows. And in the middle of this tour, MCR starts getting bigger, and slowly but surely, I guess little pieces of the Used team start defecting and then joining the My Chem team. Yeah. You know, My Chemical Romance famously had a lot of trouble with their drummer. And
several drummers. And so when they needed a drummer after this album came out, they scooped the Used front of house guy, Bob Breyer. Rest in peace. So Bob Breyer took the job, and he had to quit FOH for the Used. And then the Used tour manager, Brian Schechter, quit so that he could just full-time manage MCR. Oh, damn.
And Bert started seeing this, and he was like, you know, this is a little bit weird. It's shifting the dynamic. I was kind of like the big shot rock star. You were kind of like my sidekick. And then slowly, like, Gerard was becoming like a bigger deal. And even though the Used was headlining the Taste of Chaos tours, the fans were kind of showing up more for MCR. And it started rubbing Bert the wrong way. And things started getting a little bit tense. But
I didn't really like look into too much into that stuff. I like looked into like the album. So that's interesting. Like I didn't really... Have they like addressed it since? Like, I don't really know.
Yeah, I mean, there was a couple other like moves that happened. You know, they famously have that Queen Under Pressure cover where
Yeah, it's better than the original.
Oh, it's so good. But they originally did it for charity and kind of agreed that it was just a charity thing and nobody was going to put it out. And then the Used just kind of like put it out.
Oh, really?
And that furthered things
Yeah,
along.
that's like...
And then, Gerard ended up getting sober and Bert kind of lost his party buddy. There were a couple tense moments where Bert like wanted to go backstage and Mikey and the gang kind of had to step in and be like, nah, man, like we're on the biggest upswing of our career. Like you're not getting near him, So I don't know. We'll never truly know what happened. And these are just, these are just like fourth hand stories, legends, lore that has been passed down. So I apologize if I'm not getting the details right. These are just things that I've like read on the internet or in books. But I did kind of want to like paint the picture of the scene at the time because these were the two biggest bands out there.
I just was like, oh yeah, they were like friends.
They're gay guys together.
Yeah. I was
famously, like, Bert and Gerard were kissing all the time.
Yeah, I mean, getting all fucked up, kissing your friends.
Well, it was kind of more. They say that it was more just like a shock value thing. I think at the time too, like mid 2000s masculine culture, it was like really taboo to like. Yeah, when for boys
was
to
this
kiss.
like height of like Marilyn Manson also?
I don't know. I don't know much about Marilyn.
Let me look up because
but there is a song on this album called "You Know What They Do to Guys Like Us in Prison."
And
it's famously
awesome.
a nod to just like, some just like sexual deviancy. They just like to fuck with people by kissing each other. They weren't actually gay, but they just like liked the shock value of it. And so they titled the song, "You Know What They Do to Guys Like Us in Prison." And it has a feature from Bert on there.
There's also another really awesome feature on this album.
Well, before we jump off that one, I guess.
By the way, Marilyn Manson, it says that like popularity declined in the 2000s.
Yeah, he was more like 98.
Yeah, it was, I guess it was, God damn it, I'm old.
But Bert does guest vocals on that song. And I guess he got super drunk and was screaming. And Howard Benson claims that Bert broke the microphone.
From screaming?
Yeah. So we'll have to ask Howard Benson if that is true.
Can you break a microphone from screaming?
I don't know. Maybe it's like a vintage microphone, like super sensitive.
Maybe like touched it, but yeah, I guess.
If you're drunk, who knows what he's doing? Bert's fucking wasted in the studio.
Yeah, who knows? But like, I think that, I feel like mics are supposed to be.
Yeah, I don't know.
But I guess, yeah, maybe it might have been an old one and like popped some bullshit in there.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Could have been a tube microphone.
We'll ask that guy. It was also like, I saw a really cool quote from Kevin Lyman from Warped Tour. It was like, they played in like 2004. And that quote from Kevin, he was like, where he looks awesome, by the way. Like there's some like really awesome
vintage Kevin Lyman
like
photos.
He looks fucking awesome, like videos where he like looks awesome. He's like, yeah, they're great. I think they'll probably be pretty big. It's like just like how he is.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, the kids seem to really like them. I think they're going to be really big.
Warped really blew them up that summer is what I wrote down. Buddy Nielsen said at the start of Warped Tour, Senses Fail was a significantly bigger band, but then we came home and did a tour with them and they were like, oh shit, there's a lot of kids waiting outside and they all look like Gerard.
Yeah, it was cool. It was like the first time in this like scene that you could dress.
Like them.
Yeah, it was like, like theming shit and being like, I know exactly what the look is instead of being like.
Well, even when we did a emo night in Denver for Halloween, I saw like 3 or 4 Gerards. And I think it goes back to that same concept that Dave was saying. Like you as an artist, you should be able to be a Halloween costume, right?
It's really a smart thing to say. What a really smart.
He's a smart guy. Learned a lot from that guy.
Yeah, isn't his brother like fucking.
His brother's A-Track.
Yeah. It's all that's awesome.
They're so smart.
What a bunch of smart, talented guys.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I was wrong, by the way, in the Paramore thing. Howard Benson did less than Jake.
Not David Bendeth.
Not David Bendeth.
Oh.
I was wrong.
Gotcha.
And I apologize this name sounds similar and we do 2 in a day and I got into a Less Than Jake hole.
Less Than Jake, they started Fueled by Ramen.
No, I had no idea,
Isn't
but I
that
fucking love
weird?
Less Than Jake. It got me like really being like, I go every once in a while, I'll go back and like listen to a ton of ska and I go, there's no reason why this can't be like big again. Ska should be big again.
We should start Ska Night.
It will not happen.
Ska Night
It
LA.
just won't happen. There's
Could
like,
happen.
it's not going to.
It might.
Every once in a while I go back and I'm like, this is so fucking sick. I like really, really love it. And then I go and like, I don't think that you get like a 2-week period where you're like, all you listen to is ska. And then you're like, okay, I got to come back to that in like 2 years. It's like what I do with it. Like I just get on.
That was my fix. I'm good. I'll see you in 2 years.
Yeah, it's legit. Yeah, it's like RX Bandits and fucking Less Than Jake and Goldfinger for like 2 weeks. And then I'm like, all right, let's wait until we do another podcast episode where somebody did like a ska album, and then I'll go and listen to it for another 2 weeks. And then
I'm down to do some ska albums on here.
I really would like to. I think that it's an interesting concept in the fact that like it was around this world.
Yeah,
especially
they were both on Warped Tour. Like you could go watch My Chemical Romance and then go walk over and watch Less Than Jake.
I think it is really interesting, and like other guys who also like play in suits.
Oh yeah,
a lot of similarities here.
Huh?
I don't think the world is ready for like a lot more more trumpets.
You never know.
I am.
Yeah,
but I don't know if the world is like ready to hear that in everything.
That's fair.
Anyway,
back to My Chem. I have 2 funny stories that I found about this album because it was just so next level. Mikey, I guess, played the first recording of I'm Not Okay for Jeff Rickley, and he said that it sucked. And he was like, I don't know what happened. This is not the band that I just produced. This is bad. And then he came back a few weeks later and played him Helena, and he was like, oh shit, this is awesome. Never mind. I totally get it. And then he actually got depressed because he was jealous.
That's fun. That's funny to like, yeah, I guess hearing those like 2.
If you just heard I'm Not Okay.
That's it. And then knowing only the thing that you knew before.
Yeah.
The thing that you'd
be like, they ruined the band that I like.
Yes.
I think that goes to that speaks to this album a lot because it is one whole masterpiece artwork. Like you have to listen to it all together to fully understand it. I'm Not Okay is a great song, but yeah, I think if you're totally right. If you were in Jeff's position and you're like, oh yeah, I just worked on that whole album we made together. It was great. What the fuck did they do?
Well, I also think it speaks to Jeff a lot, being able to like separate himself and understanding that like, if you hear 2 of the same like songs that go together, you that puzzle fits for you. Like instead of hearing like one individual thing and then you hear 2 things that are like, oh, and he like really gets it. Like, I think that speaks a lot to like his understanding of like being in a band and writing songs.
Also,
and
just like as a producer too.
As a producer, like I think that I have a lot of really great things to say about Jeff.
Another interesting story, Fred Mascherino. This was Where You Want to Be era Taking Back Sunday. They had just finished Where You Want to Be. Fucking phenomenal album. That album's so damn good. They were super proud of it. They were like, fuck yeah, this is going to be the next big thing. And then Fred sits down with the MCR guys. They're on the tour bus. And they're like, hey, check out our new record that's coming out. And Fred's just like, fuck.
Oh, really?
We should go back and re-record Where You Want to Be.
Did they?
No.
Oh.
But they were just like,
this is so, yeah.
We were so proud of Where You Want to Be. And then like, imagine you're like, we can't wait. And then you hear this and you're just like, oh, damn it.
The thing about it is like, it doesn't sound there's like, it is in a lot of ways similar to some of the stuff. But it really it stands on its own as like its own thing.
Yeah.
And that's like, my biggest takeaway from this album is the fact that like, it's kind of, it's what I would love to know where, like why they got like pinned as the staple emo band. If anybody like listened to the album, I would love to know why. And also the fact that like, that they did something different. They kind of turned, they veered right when everybody was going left in like a scene, which is hard to do. It's really difficult to do. And like to be, not only like, and I remember like being young and like being like, I'm not making the things that like my peers are making. Am I going to be judged? And also it speaks to the scene of not judging them. I think that that's like, to me, the biggest takeaway of this whole album is that it sounds really vastly different than everything else out there. Like it speaks to like the emo community.
I think it takes massive courage and confidence to do what you said, like take that leap and go right when everybody else is going left. They weren't just trying to make another Thursday record. They were different. They were extroverted. Like the lyrics and like the attitude of other bands at the time was like depressing and introverted and like being stuck in your own mundane life. And this was like conceptual, theatrical, and larger than life.
Yeah, it was like really was like comic book, like like really like fantasy, like theatrics. I think that it's. I mean, I wish they made fucking Through Being Cool too. Like I wish they did.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I really would love to know, like, in their opinion, like why they got. I think it might just be the way that, right place, right time. Somebody wrote like, this is what emo is.
I mean, I just don't know what else I don't know what else it would be, right? Like I don't think that this album would have happened if, like you said, like the scene that they came from and they supported and were a part of didn't exist, or like this is peak major label. Oh shit, something's happening in New Jersey. What's happening? And they find this Eyeball Records band who put out that one album independently, and then they make this. And whether or not you're saying like this fits into, the sonic definition of emo, like they are part of it, because emo is more than that. And that's I think the biggest hurdle for people to wrap their heads around with the word in general. People get so defensive and upset and they want to fight for what they think is the word emo and what that means, but it's always been so much more than just a genre. And I think that is hard for people to understand.
Yeah, maybe I'm becoming what I hate.
Maybe.
maybe I'm becoming Ian Cohen.
Yeah, real emo that only consists of the DC emotional hardcore
and
scene.
I get it. Like I do, and I do agree. But I also agree that it's like a lot of genres. It's like almost name an adjective, like name a genre, and you could be like, yeah, that fits in there. It's like, so why does the emo one rise to the top? And I think you kind of nailed it. It's like because it was embraced by it, grown up with, inspired by.
Yep, 100%.
And so. Yes, it is. Right? Like, it's just like, sure. Yeah, it is. And I think that the emo community would be like, if something like doesn't necessarily, like you said, sonically sound like it, but is embraced by, they're like, sure, why not? Yeah. Yeah. Cool.
Totally.
And that's the way it fucking should be.
Mm-hmm.
That is the way that it should be. Anyway, what else do you got on this? There's like a lot of stuff.
Let's do some fast facts here. I know that a lot of people know this stuff, but we are doing the episode, so we got to do it. The Helena music video, iconic video. It was filmed at a church here in downtown Los Angeles. That same church was also used in The Amazing Spider-Man, and I believe directed by the same guy. Mark Webb, I want to say.
I think that he did a couple of their videos, if I'm not mistaken. And there's a bunch of cool behind the scenes shit to that online. It seems like a cool guy.
He liked the church so much, and then he was like, "I'm doing Spider-Man now," and then he used the same church.
Yeah, he seemed like a cool. Like I liked watching the behind the scenes stuff. It reminded me of like being on a set, like
on set.
Yeah, watching them make that.
The End was inspired by a short story by William Faulkner called A Rose for Emily, which details a girl who kills a man she couldn't live without, then sleeps next to his dead body.
I bet Gerard fucking loved Nosferatu.
Ooh, probably. I think, yeah, he just loves vampire stuff. Gerard did the painting for this album art, The Demolition Lovers. There is another piece of artwork that he was very heavily inspired by, which has, two people with like sheets over their head, like trying to kiss each other. It's his favorite piece of artwork. It's similar, but it's not the same at all. There were 3 singles on this album: I'm Not Okay, Helena, and The Ghost of You. Do you think they made the right choices?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I do.
I think so. And
Yeah,
they
I do.
followed my playbook that I would do, where
right.
you pick like the slow one
Mhm.
as the third
Mhm.
single.
So you're like, this is a band that
Some
can do
depth.
it all. Yeah. Also, I do also want to talk to Howard about my close personal friend Keith Morris, who was on this album, who famously Black Flag.
Oh yeah.
I lived next door to him.
Did you really?
I lived next door to him when I lived in Los Feliz, and we would go and get coffee like almost every day.
Oh, cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, he showed me in his place, like going into his place was like going into like a punk rock museum.
That's sick.
But it was like, he's such a humble, like also a short king. Like,
is he?
yeah, like maybe even smaller than me, but like with like long ass dreads down to like his ass, and just really fun and funny seeing like a punk guy become a little bit older and being like, talk about old guy stuff, growing up in like one of the most influential punk bands of all time. Like it was very, very, it was very cool. Like I really enjoyed the time that like I spent with him for those like couple of years that I.
Black Flag was a big inspo on this album for Gerard. The band, I guess, really inspired the concept of revenge.
The thing about it, that him being featured on this album, you can't hear it. It was mixed in a way that it caused like a bunch of arguments, I guess, because you couldn't really hear him.
Right.
And so I don't know if it was like an intentional thing or it was like a time thing where they're like, it was, or the way it was recorded thing. But yeah, I think that it's just like in general, like very cool to have it. And the way that like Frank said that he met him was really funny. It was just like, he was not in the position to like meet somebody who walked into a place and was like, which is like kind of how I was.
Yeah.
Like I'd like stand behind him every day and get coffee. And then one day we lived in the same day. We just walked home together. And I was like, hey, I like know who you are.
Yeah, he's like, he looks at you. He's like, obviously.
Yeah, dude, I can tell you the most literally like
Don't you have a Black Flag tattoo?
And a Black Flag shirt.
Yeah.
That I was wearing.
You were wearing that
when
all
I
the
met
time.
him.
Oh no.
Yeah. Sucked. That shit sucks. But he, the thing is like he was so cool about it.
Yeah.
He's like not annoyed about it. And I don't know if this is true, and or might have been something that I dreamed or made up, but I think where they made the majority of their like money was on merch.
Probably. I mean, that logo is so iconic.
But I don't know. Nobody I might have dreamed it.
They probably had. I mean, I feel like there was a time when Black Flag and Misfits were licensing their shit to everybody and making a bunch of money.
Or it might have been this thing that he might have told me where they didn't, and he fucked up and made like $0 off of it. It's
could
one
have
of
gone either way.
It's one of those things.
I know the Misfits made the right moves.
Yeah, dude. That like Danzig's bricks. There's a story. If you guys don't know, Danzig also lives in the neighborhood that like lived in the neighborhood that like I lived in, and Misfits is one of my all-time favorite bands. I love the Misfits. I love how shitty they sound. I love everything about them. I sent you a song I cover because their songs are like incredibly beautiful if you break them down, but they sound just like garbage if you like are listening to them. Everything's out of tune. It sucks ass. But I love it. But Danzig lived in this neighborhood by me, which was like surrounded by like pretty nice houses in Los Feliz. And his house was like very obviously Danzig's house. There's a pile of bricks in his front yard for like years. And so there's like a lot of lore about Danzig's bricks and people trying to like hop over and get like
a brick.
Yeah, there's a lot of stories.
Why is it obviously his house?
So like the house next to it was like.
Did he have a big Misfits skull on him?
No. It's like, imagine like the three houses next to you, like your house in a row, and imagine if like your house was just like dreary and dull. Everything in the yard was like dead, and then there's a pile of bricks in the front, and it was like. It was really like the color of it like didn't match like the next door neighbors' houses. It was really, really funny. So people in Los Feliz like still go and like drive by Danzig's house. I don't know if he sold it, and I don't know if the bricks are still there.
This article, the inside of Danzig's house is even more disturbing than we imagined.
It's not disturbing. It looks like a regular house with bricks in front of it.
But inside it says the home is littered with Tasmanian devils, little mermaids, double gargoyle candle dishes, and other sights of horror.
The Little Mermaid, a sight of horror. Things to be absolutely horrified by. Good writing.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Anyway, it was just really funny. And like, there's definitely, I remember when I found out that he lived there, I looked up, there was at like one point on like eBay or something, like somebody was like selling
Danzig's bricks.
Yeah. One of his bricks that they like stole. Like, I think I
just Googled Danzig's bricks.
Yeah. See what they have to say about it.
Let's pay homage to Danzig's evil bricks.
Yeah, it was like an eyesore in the neighborhood, and like the neighbors were like pissed off. It was so fucking funny. It's like such a funny thing.
This is a video where it's like Danzig's evil bricks.
Yeah, it's just like
Danzig's evil bricks is one of my favorite internet stories / myths. But I've never been able to find a really good description of the entire story.
All right, we don't have time for this.
Anyway,
today.
It's like like one of our cameras just died, but it is really funny. You guys should look into that. Like
maybe we'll do an episode on Danzig's.
I would love to know because I just know what I know because I was around there, and I don't remember like what I looked up, and I could be wrong. I know a lot of people are like very precious about punk rock history and don't fucking come at me with the Black Flag shit.
All right. Let's see what else we got here. Any other fun facts? Okay. Standout tracks. We talked about the singles.
Dude, I like, you know what they do to us, the guys like us in prison, because there's a lot of like really great triplet stuff that Gerard does like vocally in that song that I think is, really, really like it stands out from other artists at the time. I don't know. It's like Drake does it all the time, like the triplet shit, but he was singing it and like, I don't know, it just gives it this like incredible groove. That song I really love. I really do love that song.
Yeah, that's the one that starts in the middle of a gunfight.
Yeah, it's cabaret shit.
Yeah, that's the cool
I
one.
like that stuff.
Yeah, cool. They're cool. I mean, the lyrics to that are just so cool. And like to put cool lyrics on top of cabaret, like with that sort of swingy vibe to it, the triplets like you're talking about, I think that's just never been done before. And it's, I don't know. I wish that I could write lyrics like that. And I think everybody does.
Yeah. That's why it's like, I think what's so cool about it is like when you write from a place like that they write from, anything can exist. And I think that is like a beautiful way to approach a piece of art and a like a concept of an album or a concept of like a thing. You can make your own world, and they made their own world. And so there were no parameters around it besides the ones that they built for themselves.
Yeah. And that was not being done. Like we talked about, everybody else was talking about themselves and their hometown problems and their girlfriend breaking their heart.
He was talking about the devil's dick.
All right. Well, we have Howard Benson on the horn. Howard Benson, incredible, legendary producer. He produced this album and he produced so many other ones. He did the All-American Rejects. He did Daughtry. He did Kelly Clarkson. He won 2 Grammys and he's been nominated for 14 others. He's done
God, I'm gonna fucking
so many
annoy
things.
the shit out of this guy. It's gonna be so annoying. That guy that called, and one of the things is gonna be like, "You fucking, I hate you."
He's like, why did you ask Howard Benson how he got that snare sound?
Yeah,
you dick.
I
For 25 minutes
know.
on the drum
I'm
kit.
going to. If you like My Chemical Romance, there's some things that they were like really heavily influenced by that, like I was heavily influenced by, and also some things that like I didn't know they were influenced by. The first one being Jawbreaker. I bring it up a lot. Please, you guys, listen to Jawbreaker. Does not really sound like My Chemical Romance. I guess there's some stuff that does, but ultimately, like Jawbreaker is so, they're so good.
I feel like you guys like the same stuff. Like Black Flag, Iron Maiden,
Well, they're
Jawbreaker.
like the same age.
Yeah.
They were really heavily inspired by like At the Gates with this album, especially a lot of guitar shit. And then the one oddball that I like wouldn't think that they were inspired by, Blur. Yeah.
Hey, you know that band that you wouldn't shut up about on the brand new episode?
Which one?
Orange Island.
Yeah.
They started following me on Instagram after that episode.
Oh, I wonder if they started following me.
They
I
have
don't-
like 1,000 followers.
Sick.
Yeah.
They're good.
I didn't listen.
I mean, they're like me. They're like good for me.
I'll have to listen to them, and I should get back to their comment. I forgot, but
Yeah. And if you guys comment,
they were just like, "Hey, hey."
I literally like, I'll open up the requests to accept a collaboration. If I see something nice, I'll respond. But normally I just close it as soon as possible. So if you guys are trying to say something to me, don't be offended if I don't.
Or just give us a call.
Yeah.
On the phone number right here.
Because I have to do this.
Leave us a voicemail and you'll see our faces in real time when you tell us that we're assholes and we got something wrong, or that you love us and we got everything correct.
Or that we're disgusting because of a natural thing that happens to everybody.
Yeah, or that you're, I don't know, doing something wrong.
All right.
Okay, Howard Benson is on the horn. Goodbye, assholes.
Goodbye, you fucking assholes. Well, I want to talk about a lot of stuff, but
Okay.
First question is, does this pop filter actually do anything?
Oh yeah.
It does.
Yeah. They're most microphones have the big thick filters they go over, and they suck. They're too big. The history of this thing. Do you know what the history of it is?
No, but I would love to know.
It's a really cool history. At Sunset Sound in the 1980s, they were having trouble with peas popping. And that's what it's for. It's really to get rid of your peas. Because when you do pa like that, you get on your waveform a big spike. All right. And on tape, back in the day, you couldn't get rid of the spike that easily because it wasn't Pro Tools. You know what I mean? You couldn't go in and you couldn't chop it out. So some second engineer back then, it wasn't even a second, was a assistant, a coffee guy, took a piece of pantyhose, stretched it over a coat hanger, and tried it just for fun, and it worked.
Genius.
And then he marketed this design, and they started selling it in professional audio, places. And people like me bought it, to do vocals with, and it worked great.
So
That's
it's just,
how-
does it just stop like it just actually like
Yes.
you're like
catches the
physically
pee.
no, but like the just
air.
the barrier, it like
Yeah.
shrinks that pee down or that.
It was a P filter. It's really a pop filter for the P. Like we call them pop filters.
Plosive.
For the pa, and the pa is a big problem on tape because you really can't get rid of it because you can't see it. You got to punch it out. With, people had major problems with that. What you used to have to do on the automated consoles is move the fader super fast, like that. You'd have to move it, and it would have to keep up with the, on an SSL it would work because that was electronic, but on flying faders with mechanicals, it was really difficult to do. So
I've always just been like, is this some just bullshit thing? So I just, to preface this, like I am I've started to take production classes, and it's kind of all I spend my time on. And like, I literally, I always played music, and then we stopped and we did emo night for a long time. And I was just like, damn, I've always wanted to learn how to do this. We've just been around amazing producers forever. And I was just like, I finally just want to sit down and do it. So I spend 100% of my free time learning about literally sound and tutorials. And I can say I've listened to pretty decent amount of podcasts with you on it before we even knew we were going to do this. So
okay.
Thanks. Very helpful.
I'll try to remember what I said.
Guys, we have a legend on the pod once again today. We are joined by Howard Benson. Howard, thank you so much for being on CD Burners. The way this podcast works is we kind of do like a deep dive into one album per episode. This episode in particular, we focused on 3 Cheers for Sweet Revenge by My Chemical Romance. So we recorded our sort of like deep dive chatting portion already. And we have a bunch of questions for you.
Sure.
We really try to just kind of dig in, give people like an idea of what it was like during that time period in particular. And, kind of go a little bit beyond like the Wikipedia facts of these albums and give people like a sort of a picture that maybe you can't really find or look up on the internet. I think for this album though, in particular for me, like it is my favorite My Chemical Romance album, but it sounds so much different than anything that they had done before, like with Bullets. And I personally, I'm just like, how the hell did Howard Benson craft this like diamond from the rough that was, this Jersey band? Like, how did you approach producing this album, and how did you help My Chem achieve this sort of like larger than life feel with this record?
Well, I think we were just coming from different perspectives, them and me. They were a super indie band at that point when I had met them. In fact, I didn't even want to produce them. My manager talked me into it, and she said, you just got to go meet them. And I went to a small rehearsal hall. Actually, it wasn't small. It was kind of big, actually. It was in Burbank, right by the airport. I remember where it was, actually. And I met them, and they were, I think they came up and played a few songs for me, but it was just really hard to deal with. Like, I couldn't understand what they were doing, but I had a cassette of songs, and I remember liking a few of the parts on the songs. And then the real moment in that rehearsal was when I sat down with Gerard, because I had this real fear that they weren't going to let me do my job. I was coming really off of, if you think about the records I'd done before that, it was kind of like Hoobastank, POD, Cold, big, huge stereo guitar rock records. And I like that kind of stuff. I grew up listening to Zeppelin, and I like big sounding prog rock records like ELP and Yes. I like big sounding albums, just the way I am. I didn't think they were going to want to make that record personally. So I asked Gerard a simple question. How married are you to the maybe 10,000 fans you have at that time? Do you want to be huge? And he said, absolutely. And I said, okay, we can do business. Like, I just needed him to acknowledge that with me. And the conversation was probably not that simple, but I'm just saying that was the summation of what we were trying to get at. And the budget for the project was lower than most of the budgets I had back then. It was about a third of most of the records. But the A&R person was a guy I had done Less Than Jake with.
Was that Craig Aronson? Yeah.
Yeah. Who passed away, but he signed them in Bench Sevenfold and all that. So I had a lot of trust in Craig. I did Cottonmouth King stuff with him, and we've done a lot of stuff together. So I knew he was I would say he was an excitable fan type A&R guy. I knew I trusted his ability to pick artists, So we went into rehearsal, and we were just hacking around with material. But Craig, and I've told this story a lot, found the beginnings of I'm Not Okay hiding at the end of a cassette tape. And that was the moment that we knew we had a record we could make, because that lyric, it was just the lyric, I'm not okay. That I knew.
It wasn't sang, it was just said.
It was just spoken. It was but it was like a bit. That's all I remember. There were bits and pieces, and I just remember hearing the lyric and I went, well, that works with him for sure. Like he is, I remember these kids were showing up at my son's birthday party playing laser tag. Nobody knew who they were, and so they came off being sort of like misanthropes from, Newark. So the way I'm Not Okay fit into their worldview worked for me. I could put that together. So we went into the studio. It was a little studio by the courthouse in Van Nuys, actually, on right off Van Nuys Boulevard. And I would say it took about 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks. And we just started putting the songs together. I would come in every day and they would go to the Oakwood every day. And I'd give them homework every day. Hey, write a song to this, write this, finish that, do this, do that. And it's obvious, like the songs that started popping out were the first 4 songs on the record, which were really the singles. I thought was Helena and I'm Not Okay, Ghost of You, and there was one other one, I believe. But those are you can tell, I believe those are the first 4 songs on the album. And, the rest of it was kind of like, okay, I'm not going to mess with the rest of it too much. I'm going to let it go because it's I could tell that was the fans were going to love those songs. And I didn't want to inject too much of my own personality into that, but I knew those other songs, if I could put the big choruses into those and I could get Gerard to he had never really sung harmonies before, any of that, really even melodies like that before. So I'm really good at that. That's in fact, that's what I'm doing right now with 3 Days Grace. I don't even do the rest of the project anymore. I'm like assigned the rest of it. And I was kind of like that back then. I just like my guitar, all the guitars, bass and drums, me and my engineer and our guitar techs and all that did it. But, like most of it is your engineer sitting there trying to punch in tune guitar parts in, and we decided on that project for the tracking not to use any of our instruments in the studio. We used theirs. We used all their shitty stuff because we wanted it to sound shitty, sort of like we were too good at sounding good. That was one of our problems in the studio with that band is we were sort of like, well, let's use all these guitars that look like they were thrown through the roofs of stages and things. So, and it gave it their sound. We made sure they sounded like them. And their drummer at the time was a different guy, but I liked him. I think they threw him out right after the first record. I don't even remember his name, but he played with a lot of abandon, like he wasn't that great, but he was playing with a lot of energy. So with Pro Tools at that time, we were able to remember in 2003, I was one of the only guys using Pro Tools in rock. I mean, there was nobody doing it. People were scared. There were tape guys. I had worked with an R&B. I had done a lot of music with Body Count and Motorhead and artists like that. And I was using an engineer that was really savvy at Pro Tools back in the late 90s. So he turned me on to it. I did a lesson, Jake, record in Pro Tools. So they came along at the right moment at that time for the computer business, for the computers to help everything out. It was helping everybody on my records, but not necessarily everybody in the rock business. You wouldn't take a band like My Chemical Romance and record them on Pro Tools. You would think tape, right? We did some of it on tape, the drums, but we still edited everything in Pro Tools. If you go back to Nirvana, Butch made some of Nirvana in Sound Designer, which was Pro Tools. Yeah, at the time, it was the early version of Pro Tools, but that's why a lot of that sounds so good as well, the editing. So with that, and the band was open to all of it. They really just wanted to make great music and great songs. I think the only kickback I had from them was during mixing. I don't think the guitar players were paying as much attention to the vocal production. And all of a sudden, you hear this record with these massive vocals, big chorus harmonies, like hooks for days. They just thought we made a little too commercial of a record. And we had a bit of an argument about that, but thankfully, Craig, this is where you have an A&R guy to help you step in and go, hey, and I mixed most of the record, but we got Rich Costi to mix the really big singles, so they sound different than the rest of it. That's how we didn't even have enough budget to mix the rest of the record. I mean, I did it, So I don't think my mixes are as good as Rich's. Rich has spent a lot of time on the mixing on that record. And, I don't think at the time I realized how big the record would be. The only time I realized it was my wife went to Warner Brothers one day and came back and said, there's this massive poster of this band in the lobby in Warner Brothers. And I think that band was at Grady's birthday party. And I was like, oh, wait, really? You know, like I wasn't paying attention. I was on I was doing the All American Rejects record or something, you know, like to me, just banging records out, you know. The other thing that happened is I remember when I'm Not Okay got on the radio, my kids' friends started coming home dressed gothy, like the 12 and 13-year-olds. And I'm like, why are these kids dressing all gothy? And they're like, oh, Dad, it's that record you did, I'm Not Okay. And I was like, what? You know, like, so it was like life imitating art kind of, you know. And when I saw Helena, that's really when I realized this band was going to be huge. I mean, I'm Not Okay was a cool song and it was a pop song, but the video to Helena was just staggering. Like, I couldn't believe it was Gerard. Actually, it was, he lost some weight. He looked really good. The band performed like rock stars on that video. And, it just blew up after that. You know, it was crazy what happened with it.
I have a lot of questions, but I mean, I'm trying to keep it strictly to my chem. And so I've listened to a couple of interviews with you before, and at least a while ago, you were talking about how when you meet with these bands, you know, one of the prerequisites of you working with them is the singer has to have this star quality. And when you met with those guys right in the beginning, you know, is that something that you like saw in him? Because, you know, like you said, these guys are just, it was like
Totally.
You saw that
right away.
Before.
And I had known it. By the way, I had enough failure up in my career up until I produced like 14 years up to 1999 when I did POD was my first massive hit, you know. But then after POD, it was like I had a run of hits that lasted 12 years. But the ones that weren't hits are the ones you discover what not to do. Do you know what I mean? And what you're not looking for. And you know when you're not seeing a star. You know, like it doesn't take up a room. The person doesn't command presence. The person is not touched in some magical way. I remember looking at Gerard and I went, this guy's a star. I mean, I don't care if it's me or someone else producing him, something's going to happen with him. Plus, I liked the fact that he was a graphic artist and he had this other thing, you know, you could tell he was a super creative guy. And it just was there, you know, again, it doesn't happen a lot really to me when you meet somebody like that. You hope you're right. You know what I mean? Like you don't know you hope, but with Gerard, I was pretty struck by him actually. You know, he also had a very androgynous appearance to me. Like I couldn't tell what he was. Like I knew he was a guy, but he also had a feminine side, which I liked too. And I thought it would be appealing, you know, to the listeners and to people, you know, looking at him. There was something about him, you know.
Well, in that same sort of vein, there's a song on this album called You Know What They Do to Guys Like Us in Prison that features guest vocals from Burt McCracken. In our studies, I found a story that Burt claims that he, you know, was super drunk and screaming really hard and apparently broke one of your vintage microphones. Can you confirm or deny?
Yeah, he did. And he's either that session or the Under Pressure session. I can't remember which one. But he also grabbed my balls, by the way, when he said hi to me.
Nice.
Okay.
That was his way of saying hello in the hallway. So I was just like, okay.
Like right when he first met you?
Yeah. First thing he did. It wasn't a handshake. It was
right.
You know,
A ball.
Okay,
he was probably a little bit out of it at the time. But
nice.
I liked working with him, though. Craig had signed him as well. Same A&R guy. So,
I think the question that TJ and I had about the microphone at least is like, was it a physical break or can you?
I think he just knocked it down and it broke.
Okay.
Yeah.
It wasn't like we were like, damn, we didn't know that you could maybe scream that loud where it breaks.
I think he knocked it over.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Cool. It was a 67 or something. It was a really vintage. It was one of those mics that you can't mess around with. You know, old mic that you know, there's like a big sign, don't touch this mic or don't mess with this mic. You know, mics nowadays you can put them through a lot more stuff than that. But back then, those mics have diaphragms that are in them that are from like 40 years ago. You don't want to like jostle them too much, you know.
There's a lot of I mean, at least listening to the record now, like understanding a tiny bit about and listening to, you know, like once you start doing production, you kind of like look at it in a little bit of a different light. And, you know, I never listened to the album looking at it from, oh, how did they do this? Or what could potentially be the problems? And I noticed that at least with the singing, there's a lot of breathy stuff, like a lot of that.
Yeah.
And like, I was just in a lot of the songs. And was there any, were there any, I guess the question is, it's like, how did you navigate that? Because that does give such a, presence to the album, but I can also see how difficult it would be to be like this and like getting everything right. Did you have to do any like different techniques to try and really
not
hone
really.
that in?
We've changed our approach not since him, but in the last few years, I would say, because we send, this is just technical stuff, but like we would always send our vocals with breaths to mixers. So in that case, it was up to Rich what he wanted to do with the breaths. So he may have ducked them. So I don't know what he did with them. I wasn't watching him mix it. Chris Ordalgi, if we had sent it to him, he would have gotten rid of them. So, it depends on who's working on it. Like now we get rid of all the breaths on almost everything except the ballads, because it just becomes there's too much compression wars going on now.
Yeah.
Back then it wasn't so bad. So you didn't hear, like when we put compression on the vocal, you didn't hear the breaths just go wham like that. It was a little bit less, it was more subtle. But now with the way vocals are being mixed and, like on 3 Days Grace, Zach is mixing the stuff and he's just compressing the hell out of it. There's no way I'd leave a breath in there. Like it would sound like a percussion instrument almost. So you just have to be, and also I personally think on the kind of records we're making now, there's so much going on in them. The breaths take up a lot of space. You want to keep more space. With that record, we just left them in. I don't even know if there was a decision or not, really. I could tell you they're probably not in the chorus. I usually took them out of the choruses, but in the verses, we left them in.
It was definitely it was definitely a verse situation. Probably. A lot of it, yeah.
In that same vein, looking back on this album, we do ask this to a lot of our guests, but like you said, production techniques and technology has changed a lot, since this album was created. Looking back, listening to this album now, is there anything that you wish you could go back and change? Anything that sticks out to you?
Nope.
Great.
It's interesting to hear we get a lot of people that say that because they're like, it's the time and place. And if it didn't do this, it wouldn't have done what it did. Like, yeah,
that's why they call it a record.
Yeah. Smart. It's like we get 1 out of 10 people that are like, every time I listen back to this, I just wish I would have done this a little bit different. But most of the time it's everybody's like, no, that's exactly how I wanted it to be. I wouldn't have changed it. I wouldn't have changed anything. Like TJ was saying in the very beginning, we kind of try and dive a little bit deeper into stuff you can't just look up because we have the access to fucking everything. Right. And
you probably have the files that I have actually. I gave him to Gerard last year. He actually he did not have this record. And nobody had it. Nobody had it. I was the only one who had it, actually, the files, believe it or not. I save everything. So I have everything from when Pro Tools started, 2001 on.
That's awesome.
To the current on a 20 terabyte drive, backed up like 80 times. So
that's I think there's nothing cooler than that. Like but I think, if I was an audience member listening to this, I would want to kind of put myself give the feeling of the time and place and what it was like in the studio day to day with those guys, just an overarching, like how, what did every day look like? What was was it exciting? Were they nervous? Were they like, we don't know, like what was the overall day-to-day feeling? Yeah. Very
workman. Yeah. Like I was in our studio at that time, the main studio had Mike Paul was our guitar tech. Mark Van Gool was our guitar tech. I don't know who actually, maybe I'm wrong. That was before we met Dave Navarro. That's when we got Mark. It was a guitar tech, an assistant engineer, and Mike doing all the tracking. So the way we recorded, I would be in there for the drum parts to make sure the arrangements were correct. So everybody would play along, and we got the song structure down. And then the wood chopping, which is like getting the bass and guitars to be in time and in tune. Mike did most of that stuff. And that's just a lot of work. It's just like, okay, left guitar, Ray, right guitar, Frank. Let's make sure the guitars are in tune, playing together in time, all that stuff. Those are the basic tracks with the bass parts. Then when it got to the creative stuff, I would come in and say, well, we have a bridge. We don't know what to do in this bridge. We had a bridge in that song. We didn't know what to do with it. And I think it was one of us, we've thrown out ideas. Somebody said, let's put a guitar solo with a guitar part that has a harmony in it. So it sounds very Queen-like. Like we were just throwing these words out, like sticking to a wall, like what sticks. And that stuck. So that guitar solo is very much a Ray guitar solo with a guitar harmony on it. And then all of a sudden, I remember when the people were like, oh, it's next Queen. And I'm like, well, that was just some crazy idea we had, like literally at the moment. It wasn't thought out that much, So those are the kind of things that are happy accidents. They just happen. You don't know what the result's going to be, but we always like to leave that stuff in. The other part, was me in another separate room with Gerard, just me, Gerard, and my vocal person, Hatch. And it was literally just me and Gerard, really. And I would talk to him I do what's called an open talk back. So there's no button I have to push to talk to him. It's always open. That's why we can have this conversation. He doesn't think I'm talking about him behind somebody else's back or whatever. And we would just talk. Then I had a keyboard in front of me and I plucked out all the harmonies on the keyboard. So like on I'm not okay. The stuff I put the third above it. That's okay. Sing that, And he was amazing. Like, it's not that easy to do this stuff as a singer. A lot of times guys just keep singing the melody over and over again. They don't know what a harmony is. So you have to mute the melody so they can sing the harmony and kind of focus their mind on that. So all that stuff was just really basic harmony. I call it Bach 3-part harmony arranging for small groups. I still do the same thing. So nothing complicated. It's very straightforward. It's very much all the harmony theory came out of the 18th century and it still applies. If you look at harmony theory and you go to, study this stuff, you study Hindemith and you study all those greats, thirds, fourths, parallel fourths and fifths, not acceptable. Flip fifths, parallel, double fifths, not acceptable. Doubled octaves, yes, acceptable. All that kind of stuff played into those harmonies. So everything you hear is not that crazy, but that's what makes it great because it's pleasing. And the reason a lot of these theories work is because they were done a lot back then with Bach's 2- and 3-part inventions. And people went, well, that sounds really good. Well, that doesn't sound good. So, a lot of the rules were made. Now you could break the rules, obviously, like Alice in Chains, Jordan broke the rules on that record. And there's a lot of times where you can use parallel fourths and fifths, but you just need to know you're doing it, So with Gerard, those are very straightforward harmonies, everything on that record. A lot of gang vocals, things like that. Flip sixths and thirds above and below, answer back vocals. We were just flying through it, like I'm really fast at that stuff. And he was fast with me, So, one of the ideas we came up during I'm Not Okay was to change the lyric on I'm Not Okay in the breakdown to I'm okay. I'm really okay. I said, wouldn't it be funny if we didn't say I'm not okay here, but we said I'm okay, but everybody knew you're still not okay. Like it's kind of like implied that you think you're okay, but you're not okay. So he goes, I'm okay. I'm really okay. But he's not. So, yeah. Well, that part, oh my God, I forgot about that. That was a pain in the ass.
Well, dude,
we had to fly him back.
Just to do the trust me?
Well, the A&R guy didn't like the trust me.
No way.
Yeah.
We duck that at our events, and that's what everybody.
We duck it, and the crowd sings that part.
Yeah. Well, he had to fly across the country for that.
That's amazing.
Well, it's good to know. It's still getting
God.
the respect that it deserves then at every single one of our events. So, you're right. I think that's a really, you bring up some really, the way that you talk about producing, I think to anybody would be like, yeah, well, he's like not doing the talk back. They can just talk to each other. But I think that in a lot of the things that I've heard with you, your approach to doing this, to producing bands and albums in general has been vastly different from a lot of other producers, in which you are like you saying, I don't want them to think that I'm talking about them. is so important to an artist and like the overall product of what you're making. It can totally create a
Absolutely.
fucking vibe, you know? And I think that that's such an, you know, that's like a humongous part of, you know, imagine an artist going in there and thinking that their producer's not, so like saying, and you thinking about that stuff ahead of time, not just like the technical stuff, but the actual like vibe and the feeling, I think is a really important thing that like people can learn from you. But I also,
there's
in
another
general, I
thing
think amazing.
they don't talk about is headphone mix for a singer. Like if you're singing, if your headphone mix as a singer isn't good, you're not going to sing good. But so many people don't give a shit about it. They just bust out what's going on the computer to the headphones, right? What I have, and I've shared this a lot, I make sure the headphone mix is compressed. The vocal that they're hearing is a compressed version of what they're singing. And not compressed, but I'm talking brick wall compressed, like the crazy compression, no attack. So they don't have to worry about working the mic very much. They just got to sing. They're not like trying to find out what the sweet spot is. Everything's loud. I'll handle the rest of it later. You know, I can fix that shit. Just get right up on that pop filter and sing. I'll take care of the rest, you know? So even if you back off, it's still going to be loud in your headphones. So don't stop. You know, I always say you got to get in there and act like you're yelling fire in a theater. You know, that's what I want you to do. I want you to just scare that. I want everybody to run for their lives in that situation. The other thing I do is I give them a tiny little mixer they have, because I know the one thing that singers like to do is control their vocal volume as compared to the mix. So we have bust from our computer straight out is a separate bus that goes to one fader. The other fader is the mix. So that they don't have to talk to me. All they have to do is put their hand over there and turn themselves up and down, and everybody's happy, you know? And that saves a huge amount of discussion. Like you could just get right to the singing right then. You know, it's like nobody ever says, oh, I can't hear myself. Never hear that. Turn it up.
Yeah,
you know, there it is.
You could do it.
Yeah, you can do it, you know, and, you know, the obsessive compulsive singers, a lot of times I'll like look in there and they got their hand on the volume knob, you know, they're just turning themselves up and down. I don't care, you know, like do what you have to do. So, you know, and also I don't see them. And they don't see me. And that's another reason. There's a big reason behind it. I don't want them coming up with any kind of idea of what I'm thinking. Because I know what it's like. I've been a musician. I've been in bands. I've been produced. That's part of the reason I do a lot of this stuff. If I look through the glass and look at my producer and he's going like this.
Yeah, and you might not even need, you know, like he might look at his phone, get a bad text, and it's not even about that.
Yeah, he's thinking about his laundry, you know, and I just think I fucked up the record. So I just put him in a room. I close the door, and my mantra is, I don't care what you do in there. I could give a shit. Do whichever you want, you know. I'm going to do whatever I want here. All I care about is what does it sound like coming through this speaker? That's it. The rest of it's just static, you know, because the listener is only going to care about what it sounds like walking through the CVS when they go to the pharmacy and they hear your voice coming through that little speaker. That's the reality of what we are producing for the worst situations possible.
I think that's such a humongous thing to say in general, because a lot of the times it's like we have to look at, you know, we'll spend days, hours, like thinking about like what are these like little details that nobody's going to fucking notice, and like
nobody fucking cares.
Nobody gives a shit, and so we have to
all
be
the
like,
shit behind me. Nobody cares.
We have to go. Hey, what is somebody who would just walk into this event and be like, "That's fucking cool. I like that." That's it.
That's all it's about.
That's it.
Hit over the head with a brick. That's what my mixers do. Chris Sortalgi is a great mixer. He didn't mix this record. Looks like the one record of mine he did not mix. But his mantra is like, I mix to hit people over the head with a brick. That's it. The rest of it doesn't matter. You know, people have to hear my mix and go, fuck yeah. You know, that's the reaction. So I always think that way. I think like I produce like a meathead listener. You know, I try
Smart.
to pretend
that's awesome.
You know, like I'm not like trying to be some audiophile. It's not my job.
I think that's the way. That's like, you know, in my experience of doing, you know, we've been doing this for a really, really long time, and I think that just in general and listening to interviews with you, you know, there's a lot of producers that I have no idea what the fuck they're talking about. The changes that they're making make no difference. And with you, I like really admired the fact that you like go out and say this stuff? Because it could be considered kind of a fucking, you're like, this is my thing. This is like, I'm gatekeeping this. But like the fact that you're like open to talk about this and talk like a real person, I think that that's how you've gotten a lot of the reasons, like how you've gotten albums to sound as amazing as possible, because you're real, you know, like I don't know you. I've listened to interviews with you, and you sound like a real person. And that's like a relatable thing to a lot of people.
I try to be in the studio because like I need my artists to sell feelings to me, because that's what we're in the business of, are selling emotions, you know, and we are literally selling them, you know. So like if they can't be emotional and they can't be relaxed in there and they can't feel like they can be themselves, you know, it's kind of tough. I mean, sometimes I have to push buttons in them and all that, but you know, we are in the business of selling. When you listen to records, like when you hear the Mike Chem record, there's something you're feeling. You may hate it, you may love it, but you certainly aren't feeling nothing, you know? So like, I'm great at like knowing when I hate something, I usually think it's pretty good, actually. So I've learned to trust my own like self on that way. And like, I remember first hearing the Korn record, I learned a big lesson on that one, because this is like the late 90s. And I was like, this stuff sucks. They're not tuned to any key, you know, and went ahead and blew up. And I was like, okay, I got to start like factoring this into my processes. I hate this part, you know? And so I think there's a certain amount of that in the studio. Sometimes a singer will sing something and I'll go, man, I don't know what the hell they're doing, but I'm going to keep it. I'm keeping it, you know, like I'll deal with it later. I'll figure it out later. So, you know, it's funny though, when we talk about, you know, what matters in the studio. I did one of those things for Nail the Mix or URM Academy. And we did this whole thing in here with In Flames, right? And I talked about when I'm talking to you, okay? And the thing that did not sell well, okay? Because the little young producers did not want to hear about this stuff I'm talking to you about. They wanted to know what EQ I used on the kick drum. They wanted to know what reverb I used on the vocal. They wanted to know what guitar strings am I using on the baritone guitar. What's the tubes that are in the back of the Marshall? Yeah. I mean, that shit matters, but they've been brainwashed to believe it does by the you know, I'm not going to bring up who it is, but you know what I'm saying? A lot of these, you watch the stuff on YouTube and you're watching people turn into technocrats. You know, like, you know, artists with Pro Tools are a dangerous combination, because what they turn into, instead of sitting on the edge of the bed and writing a song about my mom just passed away, my girlfriend left me, or my dad's a fuck up, they're sitting around trying to find the right EQ for their vocal, which nobody cares about, you know. Right. But write me a great lyric, write me something that goes, I'm not okay, I'm really not okay. Write that. Well, no, I'd rather EQ my vocal. I'd rather EQ my shitty song, you know? So I learned a lot doing that thing. It was like 3 years ago I did it. And I was like, wow, this shows me a lot that there's still a very small amount of producers that know what they're doing out there. In fact, I think it was Clive Davis said this to me when I was doing Daughtry for him. He goes, you know what, Howard? He goes, you're a real producer. Most people are charlatans in the music production world. They think they know what they're doing, and they know all the words to say. Do you know what I mean? Oh, we got this amp and we're going to use this new product and we're going to bring in this stuff. And, you know, but that's not, when you talk to Clive, when you sit in front of Clive's desk making your record, you're really working with the greatest A&R guy of all time, right? He has signed everybody and made records that are huge. He doesn't even listen to the songs. He looks at the lyric sheets. And if the lyrics don't work, we don't even get to the song. That's hardcore A&R. That's the kind of stuff that you got to be really in touch with yourself to read a lyric sheet and go, that's going to appeal to people. That's going to work. That lyric connects. Without the music, you know, you're not giving yourself the handicap of the melody, you know, the track, none of that. You're looking at those lyrics and going, wow, I get it. Like that's, you know, when you look at, Chaperone's, Pink, Pony Club, and you read those lyrics, you're just like, oh my God, these are great. Like this, she's talking about her mama, what she's thinking about when she sees her kids dancing at this club. And you know the backstory of her, you know, and it just connects on so many. It's a fucking brilliant lyric. And if you just read it, you would go, I get it, you know. And I think that what made my temp so great is that when I looked at his lyric sheets, I really loved what he was saying. And I didn't understand a lot. Again, it's rock music, it's not pop music. Rock music sometimes is couched in, it's not, your feelings aren't directly coming out on rock music. If you listen to like Malcolm Gladwell's great podcast about this, difference between rock and country lyrics. You know, in country lyrics, you bare your soul and you talk about all this stuff. But in rock lyrics, you really can't say things like that. You just don't. You know, you don't. Stairway to Heaven is not a lyric where you go, what the fuck's that about? But you feel something. Or Smells Like Teen Spirit. Well, yeah, I don't know what that is. I feel something, you know. And I think with Gerard, he was great about that stuff. You feel something. When you listen to Helena, you may not know it's about his grandmother, but you know something's going on there, you know. In fact, I think in the bridge of that song, it touched me so much, that lyric, that I said, I got to do something in the bridge of this song. So I found this old plugin that does a tremolo thing that I timed to the record. So when she's dancing in the video and you hear it going, you know, it's like I think it was Waves Mechanics. It was one of their, called Pure Pitch. That was the name of the plug. I don't even make it anymore. But I just threw it in there, and the director thankfully picked up on it and did the tap dance to it. I thought it was really cool.
So sick.
It was so sick when they did that. And especially when they come out of that, she falls into the casket and the umbrellas go up. And I remember watching that going, I had tears in my eyes watching that video.
I bet.
I was watching it with Craig at my old house. We were sitting there watching it, and the fucking umbrellas go up. The casket comes out, and Craig and I are looking at each other. We're like, the fuck what's going on, man? Like, we just made something great, you know? Like, this is magical stuff. You can't even predict it, you know? So yeah, those kind of things, you wait your whole career for things like that to happen, you know? So I remember that one for sure. Amazing. You know?
Oh man. I think we should leave it there. What a way to end the interview. Howard, this has been amazing. Thank you for being on the show and sharing with us.
Sorry, I missed so many of these.
No, it's okay. It's you know what? We're just gonna have to do another album, get you again, and because I didn't ask any of the questions that I had for you, which is great. That makes a great interview. That makes a great thing.
You could pick it out that's left field. You could go pick Daughtry's first album. That's completely the other ones.
Dude, I'll do it. I'll happy to do it. I would love to. The thing that makes it is special is like talking about something that like the producer or artist really wants to fucking talk about, has a lot to say about it. And if that's the one that you're like, I would love to do that, I'll fucking do it.
It was an interesting album because it was made completely the opposite of this album that we're talking about. Literally flip side of it, you know? So session musicians, artist wasn't there, the whole thing, you know, like it was done like, you know, and when we were done, the musicians in the studio said, this is the worst album I've ever played on. And I went like, oh shit, like I'm fucked, you know, like, you know, it's a big project, American Idol, you know what I mean? You're supposed to sell records with it and all that stuff back then. And, I was petrified. Like, and then of course it went out and did, I think it was the biggest selling album of the year in 2007.
Well, I don't know how our audience would react to an episode on Daughtry, but I feel like it could be really interesting.
I will. I mean,
Daosin would be one you'd like to talk about.
Oh yeah, we talked to Cove about that album. That was a fun one, and he said that he really enjoyed working with you, and like you two particularly like were the reason why that record got the performance and stuff out of him that needed.
Yeah, I stopped the band from imploding on itself.
Yeah, seemed like that. All right, Howard, thank you so much.
Yeah, it's been an honor to get to talk to you for a little bit, and I hope we do this again soon.
I can't wait to watch it.
All right, man. Take care.
All right, guys. Okay, bye.